Caleb Williams arrives in New York for a potential Heisman coronation. The Rams offensive coordinator appears to be scrambling for another job. And the Chargers, well, they might be without their best defensive player on Sunday. Hi, I'm James. This is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the faithful Angelenos Morning Report. It is December 10th, 2022. I have to be quick because we've got a lot to talk about this morning. So if you like the content we put out, clickety-clack the like button. Clickety-clack the subscribe button. There's a notifications bell. Hit that. It'll let you know when we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know it exists. And by all means, comment. I try to reply to every comment we get. So before we go through today's news and notes, quick look at the scoreboard. Anthony Davis scores 31 points. But Philadelphia had a much better finishing kick. It went to overtime. Philadelphia 133, Lakers 122. The Lakers have lost 3 consecutive games. Meanwhile, today, the Clippers play at Washington at 4 o'clock. Both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are expected to play. The Kings are at Montreal at 4. This is the first of back-to-back road games for the Kings as they try to put a butt-kicking aside from Thursday night. Also, Denver. Not the Nuggets, the University of Denver, in case nobody knew there was such a thing, because I sure as hell didn't. They're going to be at 19th ranked UCLA at noon. This is the last cupcake matchup before the Bruins take a trip east to play both Maryland and Kentucky. If they get wins there, expect UCLA to take a pretty good bounce in the rankings in a couple of weeks. Caleb Williams awaits his Heisman decision with a ton of momentum. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago, The Athletic ran a straw poll and Williams was leading that. Since then, CBS conducted its own straw poll. Of about 26 Heisman voters, Williams received 17 first place votes. TCU quarterback Max Duggan picked up 7 first place votes and 2 others picked up 1 each, including preseason darling Alabama's Bryce Young. Williams seemed to single-handedly lift the Trojans back to national prominence. They were 4-8 before he arrived, 11-1 this year. Not only that, wins over rivals UCLA and Notre Dame. A New Year's Six bowl game has been clinched. He's also won 2 other National Player of the Year awards that nobody's ever heard of. So it's not like those are going to be taking a place of prominence at Heritage Hall, but you figure it's got to count for something in terms of momentum. Depending on what you think of Reggie Bush, he is either going to be, potentially I should say, Williams is either the 7th or the 8th Heisman Trophy winner over at USC. Multiple people have labeled Williams as the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. And for a guy like me, I cringe when I see the phrase second coming because I start thinking of the book of Revelation and I get panic attacks over the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But I digress. Williams says he is flattered by the comparison to Mahomes. And if you've seen Mahomes, by the way, you start thinking this is not exactly death, famine, war, and conquest, but he is a damn fine quarterback. Sean Payton, by the way, also refers to Williams as a, quote, generational player, unquote. I am absolutely fascinated by what's going on over with the LA Rams today. Sean McVay said reports of offensive coordinator Liam Cohen leaving the defending Super Bowl champs to take a similar job at the University of Kentucky are premature. Now, you might remember Cohen previously coached with the Rams. He wanted to build up his career resume. He goes to Kentucky as an offensive coordinator, then comes back to the Rams. They needed to fill an OC spot, and then the Rams totally imploded. An elite offense completely implodes. 4 quarterbacks have played for the team. There's absolutely no running game. The team has not lined up with an offensive line that has been consistent. They have had, I think they've played about 14 games. They've had 14 different offensive line coordinations. The big free agent acquisition of the year was wide receiver Allen Robinson. He goes out, stinks up the joint. So yeah, I've been calling out Liam for quite a while because the Rams offense was pretty damn good every single year under Sean McVay until now. We'll get to that in a moment because I know that there's going to be people who say I'm wrong, and that's fair. You could say LA has been shredded by injuries, and I don't deny that. But so have the Chargers. The Chargers have not had a 6-game losing streak. You can say, well, James, the Rams have a bad offensive line. So do the Raiders. But the Raiders at least have a running game, right? You could also argue that the Rams have put together a terrific defensive effort despite the fact that they have had injuries too. Aaron Donald hasn't played in the last couple of games. They're still playing lights out. So what about the offense? Finally, you could also counterpoint me and say, well, the Rams offense always ran through the mind of Sean McVay. Therefore, Sean McVay wasn't just a head coach. He was the de facto offensive coordinator. And I think that's fair. I would counter that by saying that former Rams offensive coaches have gone on to succeed with other teams. For example, Zach Taylor was LA's quarterbacks coach. He got the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl last year. Kevin O'Connell was the offensive coordinator last year. Now the Minnesota Vikings are a team that you want no part of. You don't want to play them. So I would suggest that McVay had the final say as to which play gets called. But I would also argue that his offensive coaches had to be sounding boards for McVay during the process of game planning and in-game adjustments. It would stand to reason, if I am correct, that people like Zach Taylor, that people like Kevin McConnell were terrific sounding boards for McVay, whereas Cohen was not. And therefore, Cohen is not up to the job. So this idea of him leaving the defending Super Bowl champs to be an offensive coordinator at a mid-level college football school, oh yeah, you don't do that unless you think you're about to get fired, dude. You don't. So I've always liked Sean McVay, but then I read his quotes about Liam Cohen this week, and I can't decide if Sean McVay is either Ren or Stimpy because it's all happy, happy, joy, joy, right? Quote, we've talked about that being a possibility, Cohen leaving for Kentucky. I don't think anything's official yet, but if that's the direction he goes, then he'll do a great job like he's done previously. He and I have a great relationship no matter how it ends up finishing up. He's going to do a great job with us the rest of the year. And if that's the direction he chooses, then I know he'll do an outstanding job there. Yeah, that totally sounds to me like he's just trying to do his friend a solid. But trust me, Sean McVay gets to select his assistant coaches. Nobody's ordering Sean McVay to fire Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen is out. I'm just telling you. I don't have it factually down. I'm giving an opinion. Liam Cohen's out. It sounds to me like Cohen is taking what human resources would call a lateral career move, but let's be real. That's a demotion. That's a demotion. If he was doing a bang-up job, McVay would be fighting to keep him. And also, by the way, McVay would not be mentioning potential successors, which he has. Thomas Brown has coached the running backs and tight ends. McVay mentioned him. So yeah, the idea of Liam Cohen staying, would you mention possible successors if somebody was possibly leaving or about to get fired? Matthew Stafford will not need off-season surgery, according to McVay. And you might be sitting there, if you're a Rams fan, asking yourself, which body part? Didn't Stafford have multiple injuries throughout the year? He came in with a blasted out shoulder. He left with bruises to his spinal cord. Can we lay odds? Maybe the coach just meant he doesn't need surgery on his back, but he might get it on his shoulder, or vice versa. And if we're wrong across the board, because he only said might not need surgery, can he get both at once? Can we put Stafford on a rack, just like you would go to the auto shop, put your Ford Explorer on a rack, lift him up and replace the Ford tires? You know, maybe have one doctor with a lug nut wrench working on Stafford's shoulder while down below you've got another doctor with a miter saw and a power socket trying to put new vertebrae in his spine. I'm just asking. Finally, wide receiver Jacob Harris tore a pectoral muscle during the Raiders game. He will need surgery. He is done for the year. Derwin James is doubtful to play for the Chargers on Sunday, and that would be profoundly bad for a defense that would like to lock up Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins on Sunday night. Even if you are I have Raider fans who watch this channel. Raider fans don't like the Chargers. But even if you are a Chargers hater, I'm not. I'm just like, whatever. But even if you are a Chargers hater, you have to acknowledge Derwin James is a bad, bad man. He is good. He has played every single snap on defense this year. He is in the middle of another all-pro level season. He's already had way more than 100 tackles. He plays a so-called money position in the Bolts D. This is critical for the Bolts defensive philosophies. You could line him up at corner, safety, linebacker, even defensive end. So you always have to account for where he is. This is potentially a big loss for the Chargers tomorrow night. Other players who are not expected to play include Sebastian Joseph Day, defensive lineman, cornerback Bryce Callahan, and right tackle Trey Pipkins. Now, Mike Williams should play. He's the number 2 receiver if the Chargers were healthy. He has only played 6 snaps since week 7 due to an ankle problem. He and top wide receiver Keenan Allen have played fewer than 100 snaps simultaneously all year. Also, Corey Linsley is expected to suit up, so the Chargers offense might be up to the task. Later today, by the way, I am going to post a preview of the Chargers-Dolphins game. There's just so much I want to mention about the Bolts, but I don't even know. Sometimes I wonder if I should be posting evening updates, but we'll get to that at some point. Yesterday, we discussed what the LA Galaxy could do after trading underachieving Kevin Cabral to Colorado. But what about the MLS Cup winners? What about the Black and Gold? They also have an open designated player spot to use. And surprisingly enough, LAFC actually has some roster holes that they need to fill, questions to answer that a DP spot could solve. They had a lot of strikers last year, lots of them, including Gareth Bale and Christian Tello, both stars over in Europe. Neither one of them were DPs. To get them to stay, would you use a DP slot for one of them? And which one? But even then, would that be your top priority if you like LAFC? What about midfield? Jose Cifuentes is highly coveted in Europe. The odds of him staying with LAFC are very low. Could you say use that designated player spot, which, by the way, for those who don't watch MLS, a DP spot is 3 spots that you can use for elite international players or elite American players. It's a way around the salary cap. Could you use that DP to fetch a playmaker instead of a striker? Former general manager, current columnist for The Athletic, Jim Bowden, gives the Dodgers a C grade for their offseason so far. Make of that what you will. I've met him. I like him. But if he were a terrific GM, he would be in a front office somewhere as opposed to a cubicle in a newsroom. So there is that. Have you noticed Dennis Schrader of the Lakers has edged into the starting lineup? He's been averaging about 11.7 points per game, which, by the way, not earth-shattering. Totally understand that. So without knowing the inner thoughts of Coach Darvin Ham, it would seem like an analytics-based move. Whenever Schrader is on the floor, the team is plus. In other words, scoring more than giving up in most lineup combinations. So, for example, when it's Schrader, Anthony Davis, LeBron James on the floor simultaneously, the Lakers should score more than 7 points more than the opponent. Schrader, though, missed a good chunk of the early part of the season due to injury. So it's unlikely at this stage of the season that he could play more than 40 minutes a night. It's just a way to give the Lakers a bit of a cushion. We mentioned yesterday that former USC quarterback JT Daniels has entered the transfer portal again in search of a 4th school to play for. Now, Sports Illustrated speculated that his top choice might be UCLA, of all places. Now, to be clear, SI doesn't claim to have inside knowledge. They're just speculating. The reason that they speculate about Daniels returning to Southern California is that he went to Modern Day High and he might be homesick. Now, you might also be asking yourself, wait a minute, there's multiple former USC quarterbacks in the transfer portal. What about Keaton Slovis? What about him going to UCLA? Well, of all the teams that SI thinks Slovis prefers, UCLA is not listed. Remember, Slovis grew up in Arizona, not Southern California. Finally, Maple Leafs thug Pierre Engvall gets suspended for a game. He belted Sean Dursey in the head with a stick on Thursday. And I must say, Engvall on Thursday night was the stupidest man in professional sports. The most stupidest was Jerry Tillery during the Raiders' collapse against the Rams, but I digress. Engvall, in a 5-0 game in the third period, decides to swing his stick at Dersey's head. Why would you do that? The game's been decided. Just skate around, go away, take the win, don't get suspended. I mean, what did Dersey do? Did Dersey make fun of your name, Pierre? Right? I don't know about anybody named Pierre that I wouldn't make fun of. Have you ever heard of a female hooking up with a dude named Pierre? Wouldn't you just say your name is Pete and try and think you have a better shot, right? Oh my God, this is the hottest night I've ever had. Pierre. Oh my God, I've never met a man like you. Pierre. Nobody makes me, no woman, I get it. Pierre is a weak name. Change it to Pete. But even if you get called Pierre all the way from kindergarten until you're an adult, get used to it. Stop using your stick and trying to decapitate your opponents. Pierre. Anyway, I digress. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments thread. It has been an interesting day in Southern California sports. And if you like the content that we put out, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back later today with the Chargers preview. Faithful Angelenos is a Corte El Queso production. Take care.